Good morning, all, or I guess actually happy lunchtime to my friends in South Downs and others of us living in the future. Because yes, I'm in the future today, and it's weird to me. And welcome to Kal-bardr's Corner for this episode of Coffee with Cal. I am Baron Kal-bardr Gellir, painting the Meridian Cross, painting the Argent Comet, painting the Pilgrim Star, painting the Pilgrim's Lantern, Palmer's Lantern, Defender of the West and Reaper, coming to you live from the Shire of Vulpine Reach in the foothills of Appalachia, here in the middle of Meridians. Now, for today's show, I have the owner and proprietor of Silvertree Souq, and of course, the designated human for Murphy, who is the best doggo ever. Please welcome to the show, Baroness Amani. Good morning, buddy.
Hello.
If you will, introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and why you are, in fact, awesome.
I am Baroness Amani, aka Jen Clark. In the SCI, I'm known as Amani Mashal al-Sabti al-Dulimi. And I am here now in Mid-Realm. I was formerly down in Atlantia, but I'm now up here in Ohio. And why am I awesome? I don't know the answer to that one.
There's a whole list of things. Murphy is just one of them, frankly.
Murphy is, I think that people know him more than they know me, but frankly, I mean, he's a red dog. It's kind of hard to miss him.
I thought you, so I met you and met Murphy. I thought you were joking when I first met you. You're like, no, Murphy's the star here. I'm just the arm candy. And I was like, no, yeah. That's funny. And then like the next time you were later, was like, oh, Murphy. Oh, hey, Amani. Oh, hey, Murphy. I was like, oh, no, you were serious. That's the thing. Okay.
Oh, yeah. People will like, hey, we came over to the shop to see Murphy. Oh, hi, Amani. And I'm like, yes, I know. And Murphy, he owns it. Like he'll come out of the shop and be like, yes, I'm here for my people. Here's my ball, you know. And he literally will hand people his ball, and he knows what's up.
Yeah, it makes me chuckle. I love that doggo. Like, I'm not a fan of dogs. Murphy's a pretty good doggo. So
yes.
All right, so let's dive into some things. So of course today is show is of course coffee themed. So we got to talk about our beans before we dig into any of the deep and diving topics. For today's coffee, I have a new offering from the New England Coffee Company. That is my partner Runa actually found for me here in Chattanooga. It is called Captain Griswold's Darkest Before Dawn. So it has notes of soft molasses and dark chocolate raisins. Now, I put some oatmeal cookie creamer in it, which is now a cup of the best cookie I've ever had. So I'm excited. And this is a pretty fantastic Wookiee mug that I found here. So,
that is a good mug. Noel would want to steal that.
It's got the bandolier on the back. I was like, this is a good mug. I like it. So.
Yes. I can't tell you how many mugs we have gone through that are all Star Wars themed.
I opened the cabinet up. I was like, well, that's the one we're using today.
Yeah. I think we've broken more in our history than we've. Yeah, it's crazy. Like he's very much into Star Wars. And so you open up the cabinet and there's like, a couple of mine, and then you'll have like Vader, like.
Excellent. So I know what I'm using when I come to your house this week. Understood.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Got a mug for me. So
that's right. We do.
Amani, what are you drinking this morning?
Well, you see, me and Koffee had a bad breakup a few years back. He turned out to be a very bad boyfriend, and so I can't hang out with him anymore. So I drink Monster. I know it's horrible. This is an addiction that I earned while serving with Special Forces, and I have to kick it. So that's what I'm going to do after Pennsic is I'm dropping the Monster.
No.
So I'm trying other things like matcha and cafe brio, which is it's cocoa basically. I used to have it down in Mexico. So
a life without coffee is not a life worth living, frankly, is my general opinion of it. I am a coffee consumer.
Well, I would torture myself for Turkish coffee, but that's
which one of the things I'm looking forward to at Pennsic, frankly. I'm going to enjoy some years.
And I have at the shop, I have multiple types. So I've been collecting several different brands, which will be there. So I've gotten them in from Istanbul, and there's going to be mastic, cardamom, and then the regular Turkish. And I have that in a couple different, like formats and stuff. So it's very exciting. And then we have a couple of shops that serve Turkish coffee as well.
I'm going to be so hyper and I'm going to love it. All right. So, for those out there watching, welcome to the show. Thank you for tuning in. If you have questions during the show, please drop them in the comments or the chat or wherever the hell. I've been doing YouTube for like almost 3 years now. I have no clue what fuck stuff is. I just kind of point and hope things are in the right spot. So put things where they are. let me know. Also, introduce yourself. Let us know where you're watching, because I can see a number, but I can't see who it is. So let us know you're out there. And a couple of disclaimers before we get into the show proper. The views and opinions expressed here are those of participants, not reflect any official policy or position of SC Incorporated. So Amani is on the DEI team for Midrealm. So these are our opinions, and whereas some of it does reflect official policies and things that they're sort of things we're doing as part of DEI, it's like consult your documents. Also, this is not legal advice. So we will discussing some things that are legal adjacent. We're not lawyers. Do not sue us. Cool. Okay. All right. So today's show is going to be some disability based stuff, some service dog based stuff, and some cause based stuff. Which I think we'll start with cause, because that's we were talking about the show before the show, and that should be the easy topic, but this is going to feed into a whole lot of not easy topic. So first of all, what is cause? Let's start with that.
So C.A.W.S is the Canon Advanced Warning System, and it's primarily used at Pennsic. Okay, so our largest SCA event. But that's because there's canons at Pennsic, and we don't advertise. So it's not on the web pages. So for anyone who's new, who has not been to Pennsic before, this is something you should know about. There's canons. There's usually 5 on the line that blast for practices on Saturday of Peace Week, then opening ceremonies, and then for every battle. Right. There used to be a lot more blasts, but we've got them to eliminate a lot of the extra blasts that they used to do. But what we started was back in 2015. I was on the eastern side, or no, I take that back. I was by Northgate, and but I had some of my buddies in the tent with me that were former Special Forces and Marines, and I was Army, but I was embedded with 5th Group Special Forces. So we saw a lot of stuff, and we heard a lot of mortar blasts. So some of the blasts went off from the cannons, and I found myself on the ground because I'd been tackled by one of my friends. And when I looked around, I noticed one of my Marines was underneath the table, white as a sheet. And then the other guys were not doing too well. And they had tackled one of my customers that thankfully was also a friend of mine. And it was that moment that I realized we really needed to do something. Right. That this was not okay. And so we started looking into what is PTSD? Because I knew that I had it, but what is the legal terminology? How does it relate to the SCA? And then what are the national percentages, and how does that relate to the SCA? Well, then I was moved over to where I currently am in spot 98, and Alanus of Bungia, Nordic trader, is right next to me. And I had told him about the problem, and he actually noticed what happened to me during a blast, because the cannons at that time were basically aimed right at my tent. So the percussion, and they had them down, focused at the angle was down, focused at the battlefield. So the percussion was pretty intense. And the way he describes it is I went bye-bye. So I was not there anymore. And so we went up to the cannoneers and we explained the situation, and we said, hey, this is kind of bad. What can we do to work together to make some kind of alert or something for people with PTSD? And the response at that time was to light a cannon right next to me. So we thought, well, we either need to fix the problem or we need to get rid of the cannons. So that kind of started the journey for C.A.W.S. And what we have developed in conjunction with the cannoneers that are there now, who are a really great bunch of folks, they work directly with us, and they're very accommodating, and they're wonderful, and they believe in C.A.W.S. But what we developed was an SMS texting feature. So it's an app, which is GroupMe. And the reason that we used it was because the airlines use it, the military uses it, National Guard. So we have some really reliable people who use this product because it's reliable. And it allows you to either download the app and use the app, or you just get text messages on your phone. So it sounds like your regular phone when someone messages you, and you don't have to give out any personal information except your phone number. So we started using GroupMe, and we tested it in 2017, and we had 40 participants, all came back with like, oh my God, that was the best thing ever. We were able to give 15 minutes, 10-minute, 5-minute, 1-minute, 30-second warnings. And that allows you to either secure yourself or secure your dogs or whatever you need to. What we did find out that in doing research on PTSD, and it was through, let's see, we went through the PTSD databases. I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist.
Right.
But we were going through actual databases like from the National Center for PTSD. And based on their figures, we figured that there was likely at least 10% of the SCA population that had PTSD or PTS. So PTS is without so it's post-traumatic stress disorder. You can have just post-traumatic stress without it being a disorder yet. So
I think there's like a level of where it qualifies as a disorder. Like there's somewhere in that line.
It's based mostly on frequency.
Yeah.
So frequency and intensity. So you can have PTS or PTSD. Reference it. There's a slash mark between the PTSD or the S and the D, because you don't necessarily have to have the disorder. But 10% of our population at Pennsic, so just looking at that as one scenario, one event, and that's still significant, because if our average number of attendees are 11 to 11,500 people, and 10% of that has PTS or PTSD, that's not factoring in the people who have sound-triggered anxiety, neurodivergence, have service dogs,
right,
or any other issue that might be affected by these loud blasts. So now you're looking at a much higher number for this population versus the small number of people who work on the line and enjoy the cannons. So we had to look at, tradition, 40 plus years of having cannons in the SCA at Pennsic versus an actual like mental health issue that was seriously affecting people. And we were starting to find out through testimony that it wasn't just a one-time thing at Pennsic, that people were actually going home and still having problems. So, when you look at the effect of those cannons, the short-term effect for tradition didn't outweigh the long-term effect, that we were seeing and experiencing for the people who have this disorder who didn't. For example, like I said, with the service dog, we found one service dog that was epilepsy alert dog, and the dog was just going nuts, and so they had to medicate it throughout the day. And so basically 6 hours out of the day, this dog was not functional, and that's like 6 hours of not having your primary tool to warn you when you're about to have a epileptic seizure.
Right. It's take away someone's wheelchair for 6 hours. It's the same.
Exactly. Because service dogs,
Yeah.
are not necessarily, like, to us, the disabled community, they're not dogs, they're tools.
Correct.
And yes, they're cute, but they really help us function in this world. And allow us a greater degree of independence. So they're really important. And, having that taken away from you is a really, really big deal.
Yeah. Which, and I appreciate that and so many people I know who have service dogs and make that call of like, I'd rather medicate my dog for 6 hours than have them hurting for that 6 hours. I appreciate them making that call in that instance. And then let's look at fixing the problem later. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not going to fix it in that 6 hour period. Let's make sure the dog is well taken care of, right? Because it is still a living creature at that point that you've got to manage.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and that's the other thing too, is that if you wind up hurting your dog by like exposing them to something that they don't get over or they don't manage. So say you bring your service dog and it's your first Pennsic and you don't know the cannons are there, and then all of a sudden you have this situation that you haven't integrated your dog into, you haven't prepared your dog for. Now the dog is hurt.
Right.
and might become skittish. Now, one of the factors with service dogs is once a dog becomes skittish, then if they're skittish around other dogs or people, that's it. You have to retire them.
Right.
So, Murphy, for example, there's about $20,000 worth of training and then cost of dog invested in him. And, that's an investment that was gifted to me, thankfully. But I could never afford to get again. I mean, my army buddies bought him for me. And then the owner of Braveheart Kennels donated their time to train because I had testimony from people in Iraq who had said what I had done. And so they donated everything. I'll never get that back. So I have to make sure that Murphy is okay.
So I definitely want to dig into service dogs a little more too. But before we do that, let's finish the cause side of this. So talk a little bit what cause is and where it came from. How do we use it? What's our it's a text message group me like how do people at Pennsic use it? How can we
right now cause is in my shop. It'll eventually be moved over to disability services, but right now it is at my spot, Silvertree Souq, which is space 99. And you just come to the shop, you say I want to sign up for cause. There's a liability form that you sign that basically says you're not going to sue the SCA if you don't get a message. And then you give me your telephone number, and then you get assigned a number. And that at some point during the day, once I get a break in sales, I put your number into the system and you will get a text message that says you've been added to this group, and you have to respond within an hour. So as soon as you get that message, you do need to respond, hello, hi, whatever. And then that, lets group me know that you're not a bot. And so then you get put on the group list, and that's it. So from that point on, you will get messages. We are adamant that you don't use the system for anything other than cause. So it's not a way to chat. It's not a way to make friends. It's just there for getting alerts. Our volunteers will say something to the effect of cannons on the line, or blasts are coming, be prepared, and then 15-minute warning. So it's very succinct. But then at the end of Pennsic, we'll give out a message that says, this is it. This is the end. We are now closing down this app, and then everything gets wiped. So I use IRB protocols for anonymity and make sure that there is no information that links you to anything that I have aside from the liability form. And that gets locked in a safe at the end of Pennsic. So basically, there's no way for anyone to know who you are or if you're using the system. So that way it helps protect people if they don't want folks to know that they need these warnings.
Right.
But it's very easy to sign up.
Is there any limitation for your system of how many people it can hold?
Not that we know of. I mean, right now, the National Guard and most of the airlines use it. So you're talking tens to hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah. Shouldn't be anything we hit at Pennsic, at least, nothing else.
No. I'm pretty sure that everybody at Pennsic could sign up for it and it would still work. But I would need some volunteers. And speaking of volunteers, we do need them. So volunteers, we need volunteers for each of the battles, because you come to my shop, you say I'm a volunteer, I give you the phone, or I give you instructions on where to go, because you're either going to meet up with the cannoneers or you're maybe going to go up to Mount Island. And you'll the cannoneers up there are going to tell you exactly what to do. They have a tent set up, a place for you to sit. They're really good. And they will let you know the entire process. So we walk you through everything. We've been doing this, like I said, since 2017. So we kind of have it worked out pretty well. But we do need volunteers for each one of those. Just look at the battles, basically, because we need one for every battle. We right now have volunteers for opening ceremonies and for practice. So we just need to cover all of the battles.
Yeah. And there's no, basically no knowledge needed other than having access to a cell phone to send.
Well, no, I give you a cell phone.
Oh, okay, perfect.
So,
excellent.
Yep, I give you the cause cell phone. All you need to do is be 18 or older and come to the shop. And And so, you know, in order to volunteer, you just come and sign up for a shift at Silvertree Souq. So I keep it on a notebook and let you know what time you're supposed to be there and let you know which location you're supposed to be at. I think for the most part, what we've been given advice on is that the cannoneers themselves, so members of Signal Corps, will tell you to meet over by their camp, and then they have a cart and they drive you up.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's great.
So it's also a good way to see the battles too, because you're nearby, you're hanging out in the tent.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like, take a camera. Definitely take a camera, because you will have the best battles. And it's really cool. And, you know, take some Air Pro with you, but you know, it's really cool to be able to get photos of the cannons, and you're literally getting a view that not many people get at Pennsic. And let me tell you, when you get on the field and you see especially the main battles where it's like, you know, several thousand people on the field, and it's incredible. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I plan on signing up for one just to see I just want the view. Like I'm gonna sit through a battle because like I'm not fighting during the day because I've got to work, but like I can sit there on my laptop and like also send messages. Like that's a manageable day. So I want to do it just because that sounds like a fun day. Frankly,
it's cool. It is. I personally can't go up there, but you know, it would defeat the purpose of. Yeah, I can't do it, but others have told me what it's like, and I mean I've been up there. So I know what the view looks like, but.
So we do have a question come in from Randall. So if you have a vet friend or who doesn't have a cell phone, can you get on the system so you can warn your friend? So
well, yeah.
There's no limitation.
What you can't do is like if someone else is using it. So say I go and I want to sign up, but I'm giving you my friend's phone number because it's for my friend and it's there. So you can't do that because you have to sign the waiver, right? So if you're the one that's using it for your friend, then absolutely.
And I would even say that yes, any of us can sign up for it. And also then, hey guys, I got a text message, and treat it like a town crier herald thing where we're just relaying text messages to those around us.
There's actually a lot of camps that do that, where they sign up for cause and then they warn like everybody. They'll say, all right, we got, you know, and we do, there's more than just cause. I mean, there's usually schedules posted. So you have a general idea of when battles are going to start. It's not like you can't see the battles.
They have flags too that they put up when cannons on the line if you can see the flag where you are.
Yes. So they're supposed to be posting 2 different types of flags when cannons are on the line. But again, that's more like a general timing. So that's going to let you know, like, hey, cannons are there. Whereas cause gives you a 30-second and a 15-second warning. So they let you know, like, precisely, you know, cover your ears. It's about to happen.
Yeah, the fuses are literally burning at this point. Yeah. So I think it's a really good idea. Actually, have somebody from each camp sign up for it. You know, just so it's accessible. Because not everybody knows about it, but also I know there's some stigma around having PTSD or having these issues where you may not want to sign up for it because it makes you look weak. You know? So if you want to do it, go do it. Help out your buddies that may not know about it.
Yeah, and I just want to respond to that though. At no point in time ever does having PTS or PTSD make you weak.
Correct.
I've been through that, been there, done that. When I first developed it, it was a shocker because it was several years after service. And I was like, oh my gosh, why is this happening now? And I thought, you're weak, you know, something's happened and you need to beat this. And no, just stop that. It's a mental merry-go-round that will never help you. And it doesn't mean you're weak. It means that the brain is an intensely intricate organ, and there's things that we just don't know about how the brain functions, and PTS will change your brain function. So get past the you're weak argument, because I don't want anyone to hurt themselves thinking that because you'll spiral.
Agreed. All right, so if you have questions about cause, feel free to drop them in the chat. But also, if you're at Pennsic, come by Silvertree Souq. Amani will talk your ear off about it and tell you all the things about their issues with it in the past and how the cannoneers have gotten much better. Please participate. Please sign up. Tell your friends. I think it's a brilliant solution for a problem that helps us balance that tradition versus need thing. So please sign up for it. All right. So continuing down, we talked a little about service dogs earlier. We've mentioned Murphy and his amazing work. So the SCA is a weird spot, and Pennsic even as a sort of SCA adjacent event, because it's not an SCA specific event. Like I know there's always that sort of the idea of ADA and the compatibility, and like how do we do full medieval camping, but also make it accessible. Well, sort of that is always a conversation. So what do we need to know about service dogs? What do we need to know about dealing with them and sort of managing the events? What do I need to know as an event coordinator? Like, where are we starting?
Okay. Well, first, we're going to explicitly state that service dogs are allowed at events, not emotional support dogs. There is a distinct difference. So I don't want this to be a conversation where people are saying, well, you need it for emotion and therefore it's an ESA. No, there's service dogs that are specifically trained and developed to help with mental health issues like PTSD. And they allow people with PTSD to function. And that's not an emotional support dog. There are definite differences. But only dogs and Shetland ponies are allowed at events. And if someone brought a service pony, that's it, like game over. They have now won.
Yeah, they win. Yep.
I'm pretty sure that the event would stop because everybody would be like, oh my gosh, it's a pony. But those are the only two types of animals that are actually allowed. And according to the ADA, the dog is supposed to be able to freely move and do its job. So it's not supposed to be hindered in any way, like by a cart or something like that, unless a cart is needed to bring the dog closer to you, like unless the cart somehow makes the dog do its job better. Right. But how is it that the service dogs relate to the SCA? Well, the SCA is a nonprofit, and so it has to adhere to the ADA, and for Pennsylvania, it's the PHRA. But there are some challenges. I mean, it's a remote, well, not remote site, but it's a primitive site.
Right.
And you have some things that you have to work out, but at the same time, it's also a massive event. And they do a lot of things to help their members, and that's supposed to be extended to anyone who is disabled as well. So they have to have certain things in place for service dogs. Unfortunately, federal rules are not very clear on what to do in a 24-hour camping situation, especially as it relates to something like us where it's 2 weeks of camping. Right. So, the laws and regulations talk about small things like daytime activities, but they don't talk about overnights. So I talked with my trainer who works with Congress and asked him the question and proposed to him, what should you do with things like Pennsic, where it's a 24-hour situation? And basically I was told that we need to adhere to federal laws and regulations for the park system. So if you're camping in the national parks, what do you do if you have a service dog? So in that case, it winds up going back to whoever kind of owns the site. So who paid for the site. So for Pennsic, that means whoever the land agent is. So your land agent is kind of in charge of in the camp, right? So if you have a service dog and your dog is not kind of acting the way it should do, maybe it's barking or it's, doing things it's not supposed to, the service dog handler and the land agent have to work together to either have the dog removed for retraining, meaning the person has to leave site. So say the dog like snarls or bites or attacks in some way, the dog needs to be removed immediately.
Right.
For retraining. Or if it's something like barking, you can get away with a couple of warnings, but that's worked out between the person and the land agent. That's how it was described according to federal law. But that also means that the dogs have to have downtime. So that has to be worked out between your land agent and the handler to where the dog can be let off. At Pennsic, it's a little unusual because we have merchants, and a lot of the merchants have service dogs, and we don't have a camp. We don't have space for the dogs. So when planning an event like Pennsic, you need to have a place for those dogs. So like a dog run, and the dog run needs to be large enough for the dogs, but it also needs to be accessible.
Right.
So, planning a dog run in an area like what they had last year, it was in an area it's called the amphitheater, and it's in a marsh area. And whenever it rains, it turns to slop. And it was down a 65-degree angled decline. So nobody who had mobility issues was able to access the dog run.
Right.
So then, you now have a dog that like can't exercise, right? And saying that you keep the dog inside your tent that's not okay. And you can't have rules that are different for merchants versus people who are in camp, because that's against the ADA.
Right.
So when you're planning events, you need to kind of think about those things. Like, how do we relate to the merchants? How do we relate to the people? It's always advisable to have someone who's disabled who can be a consultant for you when looking at an event, like, maybe see it through their eyes. But with service dogs at Pennsic, it's difficult. It's a huge event. There's a lot going on. We do have disability services who helps people walk through that. One of the things I will say is when you troll in, you're going to have to go around the back of main troll in, and there's a separate area there for your service dog. And you will troll in with disability services, and you have to do this, okay? But they will look at your rabies record. Don't show them anything else, just the rabies. They'll ask maybe for your vet record. That's not okay. You have to look just at the rabies. They're allowed to ask 2 questions, which is it a service dog? And what task is it trained to perform? So any other wording than that, you can't answer it. Just like, you have to be very succinct and very precise with this, because it does a disservice to the entire community of handlers if we allow there to be slippage in these questions. But at the end, they will answer questions for you, and they will give the dog, it looks like a medical alert tag, like a medical ID bracelet, and it goes around the collar. And that is the only ID that the dogs really need to have. Although most of us will put some kind of tag or vest or something on the dog, so you know that it's a service dog.
That's one of the keys of that I've dealt with Murphy is when Murphy's on duty versus off duty, right? So vest or no vest. So talk a little bit about that as far as how we the populace relating to you and the dog, because obviously super cute dog, but we don't want to take away your tools, right? So
yeah, and we've had problems with that in the past. See, Murphy is verbally trained. So he's not just trained on how to react when on vest, but also verbal command.
Yeah.
And that was really important because I'm an amputee. And so a lot of times I have to have him off leash, which is allowed by the ADA. So in the ADA, it states if the dog is best able to perform its duties off leash, then that's what the dog needs to be doing, right? So for Murphy, when he's on leash, it's fine. But in my tent where there's a lot of stuff going on, if I have him on leash, that's a trip hazard. And so when I have him inside the tent, he still performs duties. He has kept me from falling. He helps with the cannons. He does a lot of stuff, but I don't put his vest on him. So he's more free and allowed to be like a dog. So we'll play fetch. We'll do we'll do dog stuff in the tent. There was one time last year open. Pennsic for us hadn't even started yet, and we were doing fetch training. And the dog, so Murph was actually doing fetch training with an autistic kid, and someone mistook it, and they said that this is wrong. You can't have the dog outside your tent. Well, our tents weren't even set up yet, so but at any rate, when he is outside of the tent, he's always on vest. And for Murphy, when he has the vest on, he knows that that is straight work time, and he is super tight. He stays at my left. He is also verbally trained. So like all I have to do really for him to come in close to me is to make a little sound. There's a sound that I make that he knows. And he stays very tight to me. So when you are out walking around with your dog, the dog has to be leashed. It has to be tethered to you in some way. Some people will take leave of that. They'll take liberties and they'll have them tethered. There'll be like a really long leash that's attached to their belt or something. But the dog has to be in proximity to you so that you're, not impeding other people.
Right.
The dog has to be able to respond to commands, do his job, not impeded in any way. But also there's a certain behavior that the dogs have to have when they are out and about in public. Okay. And that's, the dog has to be very focused on you. The dog has to be able to perform its duties. The dog can't be impeded from doing its duties. But also the dog can't be distracted by other people. The dog should not respond to other dogs. The dog should not bark, snarl, show his teeth, growl. Any of those things are behaviors that the handler needs to check immediately.
Right.
And if the behavior persists, say, for example, the dog lunges or the dog growls, snarls, bites, shows aggression in any way, according to the standards of the ADA, and at least what I was told by my trainer, is that your dog needs to be removed immediately, taken off, given an immediate retraining check. And then if the behavior persists, the dog needs to be taken off site and not returned to duty until after it is retrained.
Right.
So we take the rules and regulations for service dogs pretty seriously, because there's other dogs that we have to worry about. And there are going to be dogs at Pennsic that are not necessarily well-trained service dogs. And we have in the past had lots of folks bring their dogs to Pennsic saying they were service dogs, but they really, really weren't service dogs. And that's a serious hazard, not just for the dogs themselves, but for our dogs.
Right.
So if I have a dog at Pennsic that is not a service dog, that dog could attack Murphy. And if Murphy gets skittish, he has to be taken out of duty.
Right.
If he gets bitten, then you have paperwork that has to be filed, and you do have to show all your training records and your shot records, your full vet package, all of that when the dog bites. But, Murphy could wind up becoming dog skittish, not just people skittish. And that's it. I would have to retire and no longer have a service dog. So for handlers, we take the idea of, dogs being in an area where they're not supposed to be and people saying that they're service dogs when they're not. We take that very seriously because it's a hazard, not just to people, but it's a serious hazard to our tools that allow us to have freedom of movement. And so it's a big concern and a big issue.
So the populace, right? Those was wandering around. And there's a hi Sarah. Runa's out running around. So when we're approaching you in Murphy, how do we interact with you and with Murphy? Like, how do we deal with that? Like, we want to acknowledge that there's a dog there and he's super cute, but what do we need to do?
If you see a service dog, and that service dog is working, the proper response is literally ignore the dog. Pretend the dog is not there. I don't care if it's the cutest dog on the planet. You literally ignore the dog. That's the appropriate thing to do. When Murphy is inside my tent and doesn't have his vest on, people will come in and they'll say, can I approach Murphy? Can I talk to Murphy? Can I play with Murphy? And I'll respond like, if he lets you. Because sometimes he's tired. It's hot. Yeah. It's really hot at Pennsic. And maybe he's just laying down and chilling and he's, so you got to watch your dog and see what his reaction is. There's a lot of kids. I can't get past the kids. I've been at other events where kids would not leave him alone and they were actually lifting up the walls of the tent to get at him. So that caused him to be skittish for a while. Like he would run away from kids.
Mm.
He's past that, but it's something that I have to watch for now because like people grabbing at his backside causes him to, react. But when you see a service dog, you're supposed to just straight out ignore it. I would say that that's kind of like with any dog, even if they're not a service dog, the first thing would be to approach slowly and ask the handler if the dog is okay to approach.
Right.
But yeah, when a service dog is working, it's best just to leave him alone and just pretend the dog is not there. And I say that on behalf of all the handlers too, is that it's hard to have a service dog. And sometimes you just want to be out there and you don't want your dog. It's like, for me, there's days where it's like, I don't really need Murphy that much, but I'll take him anyways. And usually it's on those days that I wind up like the prosthetic goes wonky and I start to fall and have to use him. But it's hard. It's hard to manage your groceries and grocery shopping and having your dog and then having to deal with the public who wants to interact with your dog and trying to get your dog who maybe is having a bad day, because dogs are people too. But so it's a lot to handle. And then when you have someone come up to you and say, "Can I touch your dog?" It's just that extra thing. And it really kind of puts a lot onto the handler. So again, I would say ignore the dog, because it's just a lot. It's a lot to handle.
And it would be similar to saying, "Hey, can I touch your leg?"
It really is.
It's in the same sort of box. Yeah.
It's like, "Hey, that's a really cool prosthetic. Can I touch it?" I mean, like that's weird, right? Or, "Hey, could I touch your wheelchair? I want to pet your wheelchair."
Right.
You wouldn't think to do that, right? And so you just need to think of the dog as in the same way. And it's hard. Like I've seen some service dogs where I just wanted to grab them and smush their face, and but it's you have to restrain yourself.
Yeah. I know when we were actually at Gulf Wars and you and I were going over to Troll and we were trying to get Murphy in the car and fully vest, he's ready to go. And I was like, "We got to get him in the back, but I can't do this because he's your dog." And I was like, "Come on, Murphy, I'm going to try to do this without like." So there was an interesting moment for him. He was even confused by it. He's like, "Oh yeah, I got to get in the car. Mom's there, and I'm what do I do?" So it's really interesting for me trying to interact with that, trying to find that balance of it's a dog, and I need to make sure I treat him like a dog because he's just a dog, but also let's get him in the car so we have a place to go.
Yeah,
right?
and if you remember at Gulf Wars, all right, so at Gulf Wars, everybody knew Murph.
Yeah.
And so even when he had his vest on, they'd be like, "I know he's working, but."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "No, there should be no but. It's just like, I know he's working."
Yeah.
But they would be like, "Hey, Murph." And so again, like no Amani, it would be like, "Hey, Amani," it's like, "Hey, Murph." And Murph would just look at him and be like, whatever. But Murphy is so good at this for being such a young dog. I mean, he's 3.5. Well, no, he's almost 4 at 6 months. So, he's been doing this a while, but once he puts that vest on, he won't let you pet him. I could even tell him it's okay, and he won't. He'll lean away from you. He doesn't want to be touched. He knows he's working, and he keeps his eyes locked on me. So, that's the other thing too, is that when the dogs are working, they don't want you to touch them. Like they're doing their job. They're trying to do something. And maybe that's something as important as listening to a heartbeat or trying to smell a scent of their handler. And those are things that would indicate whether or not they're about to have a cardiac situation or a seizure or whatever. And you wanting to interact with that is now keeping the dog from doing its job. So again, I just ignore the dogs. If the dog is off, if the dog is not, if there's no label on it and they look like they're playing, they look like they're in relax mode, if they're in the tent or whatever, or if the handler says he is in play mode or he is allowed to, play or whatever, then it's okay. But talk to the handler.
That makes sense. I think, Patrona said earlier, just assume all dogs, especially dogs at Pennsic, are working unless you ask and otherwise or told otherwise. I think that's
exactly unless you're told otherwise. And like I said, for me and Murphy, it's pretty easy to discern. And the thing is, I often do a lot of fetch training with him, but that's because he's going after Pennsic. He's finally on the schedule to go away. So I won't have Murph for a while.
Oh no.
But he's going to be taught how to retrieve my leg for me and how to pick objects up for me. So all the training, like all the fetch play that I do with him, that's because he's a working dog, and working dogs need to be working, and fetching something is a job. So the fetching with him is not just play, it's a job and a task, and I need to keep up with him all the time on it. And it really kind of solidifies our bond also.
Right.
So because our bond is so strong, Murphy does things he's not trained to do. He has done glucose alert when I started to have a blood sugar issue, and almost passed out. I was having medicine issues when I was prescribed new medication, and it was something was off, and Murphy started alerting to things that were going on. He will tell me if I've overdone it, because I do that a lot. And so that's the really funny one. He'll herd me. He herded me to the couch and then jumped on me until I sat down. And then he got on the couch and literally sprayed like this all over me, so I couldn't move. And that was the signal to, like, Mom, you need to rest. So he does things that he was never trained to do, but because our bond is very tight, he does them. He knows my scent. He knows, but he tries really hard to help other people out. Like if he sees a wheelchair, he'll look at me like, Mom, you're good. I know you're good. Can I go? And he'll go and he'll just sniff the person, check on him, and then he'll post next to him and like let them pet him, even if he's in vest. And he does that to check them out to see if they're okay. And then he'll come back to me. So he's a really intuitive dog.
He's a top-notch doggo. So we had a question, well, actually a question and follow-up statement here from Evelina about specifically at Pennsic. So she's had problems with people at Pennsic who are misinformed on what service dogs do and don't do, and even get yelled at for having a dog in a harness instead of a full vest. So I guess the question is, like, what do people who have service dogs do when dealing with the public when you have a negative interaction like that? Like, what's the, like, how do you deal with that when you do have that negative interaction?
Well, first off, service dogs don't have to have anything on them.
Right.
Like nothing at all. And the only thing they need to have is the leash that tethers them to you. Having a vest on a dog, honestly, is a courtesy to the public.
Right.
The reason that I put a vest on Murphy is to let him know that it's work time. So it's a signal to my dog. I know other trainers or other handlers on work and when they're off work. A negative interaction, though, I have had so many. Oh my gosh. One interaction in Virginia was so extreme that I literally, because the guy grabbed my dog and was like restraining my dog and holding on to him and wouldn't let go. And I recited state law, I recited federal law. I asked him several times to let go of my dog. He wouldn't. And so finally I told him that the dog is not an animal. The dog is an extension of me. And as such, by federal law, he was restraining me. So that's a kidnapping offense. Right. So he's restraining me. And when that didn't work, I said, and I am a concealed carry holder. So he finally let go. But that was after 20 minutes of trying to get my dog back from him. I've had young women who have followed me around the grocery store. And when they asked, can we pet your dog? And I said, no, they literally followed me around the store and harassed me until I basically turned mom on them and shut them down pretty quickly. But it happens all the time. And the best thing that I can say is have a little grace and some patience and just use the law as your saving grace. So know the law, be able to have your 5-minute elevator speech on what the law states and the protections that it gives you. This happens a lot in restaurants where people will say, like, you can't bring a dog into there. Well, actually, yes, I can. And so I would say, if you're a handler and you are new to this, know the law, recite the law, know the state regulations. If you go to an event in a different state, look up their state regulations. Usually it should be in line with federal
Right.
law, and federal law always trumps the state. But you should know how to protect yourself and how to protect your dog. Because again, it's a dog and it's going to do stuff, but it's also an extension of you and it's a tool. So
it falls in line with if I go on an airplane and I'm carrying my SCA weapons with me, I have to look up the regulations for that airplane. Same thing. If you're
mhm,
going to be traveling, look up those regulations where you're going to, and honestly, in transit,
mhm.
and it does suck. And we've talked about this a lot with some of the other the DEI things. It sucks that that you have to put in the extra effort for that, but it's easier for you to put the extra effort so you can protect yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I have to do that for every single store that I go to
Yeah.
or every single location that I go to for carrying. So for me, it's kind of second nature. It's like, all right, well, I have my dog and I know the laws for that. But, I look things up to make sure that I understand legal regulations for carrying a weapon of any type.
Right.
And now I do this to protect my tool, my dog, so that I don't have these interactions. But they happen, and the public, you would think by now, would know how to react, but they don't, or they don't care. So the best defense is just know the laws, know the regulations of your area, and be prepared with your 5-minute elevator speech to be able to respond when someone is being negative or aggressive, because you always have the law on your side. And if they want to escalate, 911.
Right.
I mean, the police will come and they'll tell them that they're wrong, and
Yeah. And speaking as the sort of the non-disabled ally in the room here, for those out there, my suggestion to you is to also know the law. Look up those same laws for if you have friends that you'll deal with this, people and be ready to stand in defense. I'm not saying tackle the people have a fight, but also make sure your friends are safe. It's something that I think we should do for anybody who has any of those issues, whether it's a young girl at a party, someone who's disabled and has a service dog, or a colored person in the wrong town. Like, stand up and have those conversations, and be ready to call 911 and deal with that.
Now, that being said, at Pennsic, we have disability services,
Right.
and if is the lead this year, and I think she has a service dog. So she should know the rights and rules and regulations. There's the DEI team. Many of us are going to be at Pennsic. I will be at Pennsic. If you're happening to be in Merchants and something happens, you can always stop it in my booth. I usually get pretty busy, so give me a second and catch my eye, and then just say, hey, I have a quick question about service dogs, and I will answer as best as I can. But we do have other people that can help. There's also your in-kingdom resources. There's not just your DEI resources, but your seneschal will know about service dogs, or they should. I mean, they're like the legal, yeah. So, and if not, then they will know who to contact. But I would say that the disability team at Pennsic probably has the hardest job and the most things that they have to juggle. So again, go with a bit of grace, but know your rights and be prepared to advocate for your dog. But that being said, if your dog is misbehaving, it's on you. Like, if your dog is barking, it's on you to make sure that the dog stops barking. If your dog growls or shows aggression, then you know what? You might need to leave Pennsic. And it's up to you to make these decisions, because you're the one that is in charge of that animal. And although they are a service dog, they're still an animal. So I know we're also going to have service dogs in training that are going to be there. That's the other thing. Service dogs in training by law are given the same protections as service dogs. So the best thing I can say for that is just to let us know, like, if you are a service dog in training, or if you're the handler of a service dog in training, put a patch on them that says in training. So that way, if they do something that's a little bit untoward, maybe they get excited when they see another dog or something, and it's a new service dog in training, then at least other handlers are able to go, all right, we know that this is a not fully trained. But in order for that dog to be there, they should have some like training to the level where they will be able to interact with all these people, all these activities. They should have gone through socialization and some level of training already. They should know how to be around other dogs. So, they should have some knowledge, but it's always best for us to know if a service dog is in training. It's always best to let us know by some type of indicator. And then that way we can help you or give you some grace or what have you. But they are protected by the exact same laws as fully trained service dogs.
There's a question about the person's name. So Baroness Isabeau, I put both their name and the event disability coordinators Califiend into the chat, as well as the email address, which is disability@pennsicwar.org.
I'm sorry.
That's right. The names are both in there. So people are asking.
Yeah, Drusilla is the one. So Isabeau is in charge of volunteer services. She's not in charge of disability services.
Oh, okay. She's listed on the website as it still.
Yeah, that's probably from last year. But I've seen this year's staff list, and I've talked with the mayor already about this.
Okay. So regardless, disability@pennsicwar.org will get you the right people.
And it'll get you to the right people. Yeah. And then for folks who have not been to Pennsic before, right across from the Cooper store. So on the road that goes into Cooper store, across from the bathhouse and then there's like the play yard is also. So it's like there's the play yard for the kids, and then there's the bathhouse, and then right across from that, like kind of in the triangle, is the 2 tents for information services and disability services. Disability services is one of the most important things ever at Pennsic for tons and tons and tons and tons of people. But they get the least amount of volunteers and the least amount of help. So and you don't have to have any skills, right? Like you can go there and they can tell you what to do, and it might be something as simple as answering questions or typing up notes or I don't know, whatever. But please, if you have an hour of time, go give it to disability services. They are a wealth of information. It's also information point, so they can tell you all kinds of stuff about Pennsic. But go help that team out because they really, really do need it. And you could do it even if it's your first war. I mean, like serving is like one of the coolest things you can do at Pennsic, and it's the best way to get a little bit of insight on the behind the scenes of Pennsic and to meet people. So volunteering at war is really, really cool. I strongly suggest it, especially doing like security shifts and stuff like it's really fun.
Right.
So
I've been told that multiple times. Make sure I grab a security shift and a golf cart at some point just to see the entirety of Pennsic.
I tell you what, security shift, the 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. period was the one that I always did. Before the amputation, that was the one I always did every single Pennsic. And it was so fun because you got to see the post party, like all like the stuff you'd see is just crazy. But it was really, really fun to do that particular shift. And you may not always get a golf cart. That's the other thing too. You might be doing walking shifts, but still it's so much fun. And again, you get to see things, meet people, help people. So yeah, I strongly suggest volunteering for security or for any type of thing. I know that the staff that's up there, they're always taking volunteers, but Disability Point really, really, really needs them. So, if you can, please give an hour of your time, and definitely sign up for a shift for a cause because that helps people too.
All right, I'm gonna do a couple of. We're actually just hit our hour mark. I'm gonna do a couple show plugs, and we'll do some final thoughts. And I've got one final question for you from our audience here. So, coming up next, let's see. Actually, on Ask the Knights Live, over on Ask the Knights Live channel, this Tuesday, we have 2 amazing nights: Baron Casimir and oh god, forgot the other one. Anyways, check that out. It's over there. I'll get their names later because, of course, it's not one thing. Apologies for that. But at Pennsic on 8 for the first Friday, we'll have Whose Cause Is It Anyways live from Pennsic 50 over on the Performing Arts stage at 6 p.m. We'll be doing fundraising for the Ukraine Relief Fund and things in Ukraine. There is a specific charity we have that is from one of the improv adjacent folks that is the most helpful. So check that out if you're at Pennsic. I'll also be posting the links out to those websites here on Kal-bardr's Corner if you want to help support that when you're not at Pennsic. That Sunday, I'll be back with another episode of Coffee with Cal, doing a live from Pennsic shoot. So it'll be just me hanging out, having some coffee, and telling stories, recapping the first week. And anybody who wants to stop by for that, I'll be posting the where of that a little closer to once I get on site and make sure I've got power. So check that out. Let's see. Of course, if you want to support Kal-bardr's Corner and KK Production, everything we support here, look us up on Patreon, patreon.com/KK Productions. Join our grand wall. You also can check us out on Patreon or on Redbubble by searching KK Productions. All right. Let me remove that. Cool. So don't forget to volunteer at Pennsic. Look up Silvertree Souq, Space 99. If you need amazing Ottoman Persian garb and awesome cool stuff, this is Lady Maker right here, man.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we'll just talk your ear off about it and tell you all the neat things about why she does the things, because it's not just garb. It's like it's got history, man.
Hey, I teach. I have reference books in Ottoman and Persian stuff. I teach. I served over there, so I've got tons of stories from, almost 5 years over in the Middle East. It's a fun place to be. We try and make it fun. But also, if you have questions about anything that we've talked about here relating to the stuff I do, you can also email me at silvertreesouq@gmail.com. And it's Silvertree, one word, and then Souq is SOUQ. Silvertreesouq.com. And I'll answer whatever questions I can as quickly as I can.
All right. One last thing for me. I was sent a message during the show. I want to apologize. I used the term colored people instead of people of color, and was corrected on that. So apologies for that. So people of color, we're discussing the helping people. So apologies for that. Thank you for the correction for the person who messaged me. Last but not least, Amani, we had one question from Baron Logan in the audience. Is Murphy around? They want to see him.
Hold on, Noel. Hey, let's see if we can take you on a little.
Yep. Because if not, Murphy will be at Pennsic. You can come by and see him at the shop. But we've talked about him a lot.
Let's see. Let me.
So it's okay if not. We can get pictures of him posted later.
Yep, that's true. Murph. Here we are.
There he is.
Hi, Murph.
Everybody, Murphy. Best doggo ever.
Here's Murphy. We also have the baby too. He will never be a service dog. He's not bright.
Right. He's really not. I've met that doggo too. He is not bright. So,
yes, but Murph is awesome. Murph is.
There you go. So there's Murphy. If you guys see him at Pennsic, ignore him properly, and then
unless you come by the shop. If you come by the shop, then I'll tell you, Murphy, and this is the last note, but Murphy we've had folks that have come in after hearing the cannons who have said, I need some help. I need a moment. Basically they were in a fugue. They came out, they were needing to decompress, and Murphy just took care of them. So he was in the shop. He didn't have his vest on. And basically he took care of anyone who came in. He would give them hugs, snuggles, pressure therapy. What he'll do, he'll lean into you or he'll give you a hug. So if you're having a major issue, and I say it's not just for vets or PTSD, we've had autism issues as well. So, come by the shop if you're having, where you need a moment, and, see if Murph is available.
You should start like renting Murphy out like a few minutes at a time, man.
He likes to help, and he does it whether I ask him to or not.
That's true. All right, folks. Well, it has been an amazing hour. Amani, you are an awesome person. I want to thank you for everything you do with CAWS and disability services. And I'm excited to see what you do with the DEIB team in Middle Kingdom now.
Well, I'm just a part of that. That's Runa. Yeah. Runa Curry is in charge of. I'm one of her deputies. So
you guys are going to do an amazing job. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing you very soon and having some fun at Pennsic.
All right. Yeah, and it's going to be here too. So it's going to be exciting.
I'm not scared at all. But for those out there watching, for now, that, folks, is an empty cup. And I'm just excited to be here. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you tune in every other week for here on Coffee with Cal and all our other shows. If you have a topic, look us up, ping me, let me know. I'd love to have you on. But for now, this has been Amani and Cal in Kal-bardr's Corner. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.